大家好，我是汉文教练哦，今天又来到读书了，延续昨天在读的书本，那就是这一本书《Retire Young, Retire Rich》，and from there itself，上一次 Part One itself 我读的就是在于它的 prologue，所以在今天给予大家的分享那是什么呢？那就是我们的 Chapter One、Second One，and from Second One itself，right，它其实就是 the leverage of your mind。So I'm going to read it itself and let's learn together. The most powerful form of leverage we have is found in the power of our mind. The problem with leverage is that leverage can work in your favor or against you. If you want to retire young and retire rich, the first thing you must do is to use the power of your brains to make you rich. When it comes to money, too many people use the power of their brains to make themselves poor. As rich dad say, one big differences between the rich and the poor is that poor people say, I can't afford it more often than rich people. He also said, in Sunday school, I learned and the word become flesh. Continuing on, he said, poor people use poor words and poor words create poor people. Your words do become flesh. In this section, you will learn the differences between rich words and poor words, fast words and slow words. You'll find out how to change your financial future by changing the words you use and the way you think. If you can change your words and your thoughts to those of the rich, retiring young and retiring rich will be easy. So the first chapters is how to become rich and retire young. So the following is a story of how my wife Kim and my best friend Larry and I began our journey from broke to rich to retire in less than 10 years. I tell this story to encourage any of you who may be doubtful or in need of some self-confidence to begin the journey to retiring young. When Kim and I started, we were nearly out of money, low on confidence and filled with doubts. We all have doubts. The difference is what we do with our doubts. The journey began in December of 1984. Kim, my best friend, Larry Clark, and I were skiing in Vancouver, British Columbia on Whistler Mountain. The snow was very deep, the runs were long, and the skiing were excellent, although very cold. At night, the three of us sat in a little cabin that was snuggled up in between tall pines, barely visible because the snow was up to the roof. Sitting around the fire every night, we would discuss our plans for the future. We had very high hopes, but very little resources. Tim and I were on our last few dollars, and Larry was in the process of building another business. Our discussion ran late into the night every night. We discussed books we had recently read, as well as movies we had seen. We listened to educational tape we had brought along, and then discussed the lessons on those tapes in depth. On New Year's Day, we did what we do every year. We set our goals for the coming year. But this year, our goal setting sessions was different. Larry wanted to do more than just set goals for the coming year. He wanted us to set goals that change our life by changing our realities. He said, why don't we write a plan on how we can all become financially free? I listened to his words and heard what he said, but I could not fit what he said into my reality. I talked about it, dreamed about it, and knew that someday I would do it. But the idea of being financially free was always an idea in the future, not today. So the idea did not fit. Financially free? I asked. The moment I heard my voice, I know how much of a wimp I had become. My voice did not sound like the old me. We have talked about it many times, Larry said. But I think it is time to stop talking, stop dreaming, and start committing. Let's write it down. Once we write it down, we know we have to do it. Once we write it down, we support each other on this journey. Since we were almost out of money, Kim and I look at each other. The glow from the fire illuminate the doubt and uncertainty on our faces. It's a good idea, but I think I would rather just focus on surviving for the next year. I just left the nylon and Velcro wallet business after it crashed in 1979. I spent the next 5 years rebuilding the business and then walked away from it. I walked away early because the business had changed dramatically. We were no longer manufacturing in the United States. In order to compete with increasing competition, we have moved our factories to China, Taiwan, and Korea. I left the business because I could no longer stand the idea of using sweatshop child labor to make me rich. The business was putting money in my pocket, but it was taking life out of my soul. I was not getting along with my partners. We had grown apart and did not see eyes to eyes. I walked away with very equity. I just could not continue to work in a business that violated my spirit and with partners I could not talk to. I'm not proud of how I left, yet I knew it was time to leave. I had been there for 8 years and I had learned a lot. I learned how to build a business, how to destroy a business, and then how to rebuild it. Although I walked away with very little money, I did walk away with priceless education and experience. Come on, Larry, say Larry. You were being a whim. Instead of setting simple 1-year goal, let's go for it. Let's set a big multi-year goal. Let's go for freedom. But we don't have much money, I say, looking over at Kim, whose face reflected my concern. We started over again. All we want to do is survive for the next 6 months and maybe a year. How can we think about financial freedom when all I can think about right now is financial survival? Again, I was shocked at how wimpy I sounded. My self-confidence was really low. My energy was really low. Even better, think of this as a fresh start. Larry was now on it. He could not stop. But how can we retire early when we don't have any money? I protested. I could hear more and more of the whim in me coming out. I felt weak inside and did not want to commit to something just yet. I just wanted to survive for the financial short term and not to think of the future. I did not say we are going to retire in a year, say Larry, now irritated with my wimpy response. All I'm saying is, let's plan on retiring now. Let's write out the plan, create a goal, and then focus on the idea. Most people did not think about retiring until it is too late, or they plan on retiring when they are 65. I don't want to do that. I want a better plan. I don't want to spend my life working just to pay bills. I want to live. I want to be rich. I want to travel the world while I am young enough to enjoy it. I just sat there listening to Larry telling me on the benefit of setting such a goal. I could hear the little voice inside me telling me why setting a goal to be financially free and retiring early was unrealistic. It even sounded impossible. Larry continued. He did not seem to care if Kim and I were listening, so I tuned him out as I began to think about what he had said. Silently, I said to myself, setting a goal to retire early is a good idea. So why am I fighting it? It's not like me to fight a good idea. Suddenly, in my silence, I began to hear my rich dad saying, the biggest challenge you have is to challenge your own self-doubt and your laziness. It is your self-doubt and your laziness that define and limit who you are. If you want to change who you are, you must take on your self-doubt and your laziness. It is your self-doubt and laziness that keep you small. It is your self-doubt and laziness that deny you the life that you want. I could hear Rich Dad driving home his point, saying, there is no one in your way except you and your doubts. It is easy to stay the same. It is easy not to change. Most people choose to stay the same all their life. If you will take on your self-doubt and your laziness, you will find the door to your freedom. Rich Dad had this talk with me just before I left Hawaii to come on this trip. He knew I was probably leaving Hawaii for good. He knew I was leaving my home and a place I felt very comfortable in. He knew I was venturing out into the world without any guarantees of security. Now, just a month after my talk with Rich Dad, I found myself sitting on this tall, snow-covered mountain, feeling weak, vulnerable, and insecure. Listening to my best friend telling me the same thing, I knew it was time to grow up or to give up and go home. I realized it was this moment of weakness on the mountain that I had come for. It was decision time once again. It was time to choose. I could let my self-doubt and laziness win, or I can change my perspective about myself. It was time to move forward or go backward. As I tuned back into Larry talking about freedom, I realized that he was not really talking about freedom. At the moment, I realized that taking on my self-doubt and my laziness was the most important thing I could do. If I had not taken it on, my life would go backwards. Okay, let's do it, I say. Let's set a goal to be financially free. That was New Year's Day, 1985. In 1994, Kim and I were free. Larry went on to build his company, which went on to become one of Inc. magazine's fastest growing company of the year in 1996. In 1998, at the age of 46, Larry sold off his company, retired, and took a year off. How did you do it? Probably a lot of people will ask that. Whenever I tell this story, the questions I am asked is how? How do you do it? I then say, it's not about how, it's about why Kim and I did it. I went on to say, without the why, the how would have been impossible. I could tell you how Kim, Larry, and I did it, but I won't. how we did it is not important. When it comes to how we did it, all I will say is that from 1985 to 1994, Tim, Larry, and I focused on reach that 3 paths to great wealth, which are increasing business skills, increasing money management skills, increasing investments. There are many books written on each of these paths, and if I did the same, there will be just another how-to book. But I think it's more important than how is the why we did it. And the why is because I wanted to challenge my own self-doubt, my laziness, and my past. It was the why that gave us the power to do the how. Rich Dad often say, many people ask me how to do something. I used to tell them until I realized that even after I told them how I did something, they often did not do it. I then realized that it was not the how, but why I do something that is more important. It's the why that gave you the power to do the how. He also say, the reasons most people do not do what they can do is because they do not have a strong enough why. Once you find the why, it is easy to find your own how. Instead of looking inside themselves to find their own why for wanting to become rich, most people look for the easy road to wealth. The problem with the easy road is that it usually ends in a dead end. Arguing with myself. That night, sitting in a cold mountain cabin listening to Larry, I found myself silently arguing with him. Every time he said, let's set it a goal, write it down and create a plan, I could hear myself arguing in response such as, but we don't have any money. I can't do that. I'll think about it next year. Or once Kim and I get settled. I don't understand our situation. I need more time. Over the years, my rich dad had taught me many lessons. One of the lessons was if you find yourself arguing with a good idea, you may want to stop arguing. That night, as Larry went on and on about getting rich and retire early, I again heard Rich Dad warning me about arguing against a good idea. Explaining further, Rich Dad said, whenever someone says something like, I can't afford it or I can't do it to something they want, they have a big problem. Why in the world would somebody say, I can't afford it or I can't do it to something they want? Why would someone deny themselves the things they want? It makes no logical sense. As a fire crackled in the fireplace, I find myself arguing against something I wanted. Why not retire rich and retire early? I finally asked myself, what would be wrong with that? My mind began to open slowly and repeated silently to myself, why am I arguing against the idea? Why am I arguing against myself? It is a good idea. I've talked about it for years. I did want to retire by 35, but now I'm almost 37 years old and I'm not even close to retiring. In fact, I'm nearly broke. So why am I arguing? Once I said that to myself, I realized why I had been arguing against a good idea. At the age of 25, I had planned on becoming rich and retiring between the age of 30 to 35. That was my dream. But after losing my Velcro wallet business the first time, my spirit was crushed and I lost much of my self-confidence. That night, sitting by the fire, I realized it was my lack of self-confidence that was doing the arguing. I was arguing against a dream I wanted. I was arguing because I did not want to feel disappointed again. I was arguing because I was protecting myself from the pain that dreaming big dreams that can bring if that big dreams does not become a reality. I had dreamt and failed. That night I realized that I was arguing against failing again, not against a dream. Okay, let's set a big goal, I said quietly to Larry. I finally stopped arguing against a good idea. The argument was still there, but I was not going to let the argument stop me. After all, it was only an argument I was having with myself and no one else. The little person inside me was arguing against the person who wanted to grow up and be bigger. Good, said Larry. It's about time you stop being such a wimp. I was really getting worried about you. The reasons I had decided to do it was because I had found my why. I knew why I was going to do it, even though at the moment I did not know how I was going to do it. Why I decided to retire early. How many of you have been ever said to yourself, I'm sick and tired of myself? Well, that New Year's Eve, sitting around a fire with Kim and Larry, I got sick and tired of my old self and decided to change. It was not just a mental change. It was a change that came from a deep inside. It was time for a big change. And I knew I could change because I found out why I wanted to change. The following are some of my personal whys why I decided to go for retiring young and retire rich. I was fed up with being broke and almost struggling for money. I had been rich for a brief moment with my wallet business, but after the business crash, I was back to struggling again. Although my rich dad had taught me well, I still only had this lesson. I had still not become rich, and it was time for me to become rich. Next, I was tired of being average. Although school teachers say Robert is a bright boy, but he does not apply himself. They also say he's bright, but he will never be as smart as the gifted kids. He is just above average. That night, sitting on the mountain, I got sick and tired of being average. It was time for me to stop being average. When I was 8 years old, I came home and found my mom crying at the kitchen table. She was crying because we were buried under a mountain of bills. My dad was doing the best he could to earn more money, but as a school teacher, he wasn't doing so well financially. All he could do was say, "Don't worry, I will handle it," but he didn't. The way my dad handled it was by going back to school, working harder, and by waiting for his annual pay rise. Meanwhile, the bills keep piling up, and my mom felt more and more alone with no one to turn to. My dad did not like to discuss the subject of money, and if he did, he only got angry. I suddenly remember deciding at the age of 8 to find the answers that could help my mom. That night, sitting on the mountain, I realized that I have found the answer I searched for since the age of 8. It was now time to take those answers and turn them into reality. The most painful why of all was the reality that I now had a beautiful young woman in my life, Kim. I had met my soulmate, and she was in this financial mess because she loved me. That night on the mountain, I realized that I was doing to Kim what my dad had done to my mom. I was repeating a family pattern, and the moment I found my real why. So, those are my whys. I wrote them down that night and kept them in a secret place. For those of you who read my second book, Rich Dad Cash Flow Quadrant, you may recall that things got worse for us once we left the mountain. I started that book by telling the story of Kim and me living in a car for about 3 weeks after our money ran out. So things did not get better just because we made the decision to retire rich, but it was the reason why that kept us going. Things did not go well for Larry either after leaving the mountain. He too had substantial financial setback in the late 1980s, yet his wife kept him going. I found out, as my rich dad did, that I cannot tell anyone how to get rich. I now ask people why they want to become rich. Without a strong enough why, even the easiest how to get rich will become too hard. There are many, many ways to get rich, but there are only a few personal reasons why you want to get rich. Find your why, and then you will find your how. As the old saying say, well, where there is a will, there is a way. For me, finding my will made finding my way possible. Without the will, the way would have been too hard. A suggestion for all of us. I learned years ago that passion is a combination of love and hate. Unless someone has a passion for something, it is difficult to accomplish anything. Rich Dad used to say, if you want something, be passionate. Passion give life to your life. Give energy. Passion give energy to your life. If you want something you do not have, find out why you love what you want and why you hate not having what you want. When you combine those two thoughts, you will find the energy to get off your seat and go get anything you want. This is very good. So you may want to start with a list comparing love and hate. For example, I will create the following list. Example, love. But I love being rich. I hate being poor. I love being free. I hate being required to work. I love being able to buy anything I want. While on the hate, not having what I want. What I love is expensive things. What I hate is on cheap things. What I love is having others do what I don't want to do. What I hate is doing things I don't want to do. My suggestion is you may want to start your list of love and hate in a space listed. If you need more space, which I hope you do, find a much bigger, larger piece of paper. Then you may live your life with more and more passion. What you can do is on the left, you write what you love. On the right, you write down on what you hate. And that is how you'll be able to understand more of yourself. So sit quietly to find and define your love and hate. Then write down and find your why. Write down your dreams, goals, and plans of becoming financially free. Retiring early and retiring as young as possible. One, it is in writing. You may want to show it to a friend who will support you in achieving your dreams. Take a look at this paper with your dreams, goals, and plans on a regular basis. Talk about it often. Ask for support. Be willing to continually learn. And before you know it, things will begin to happen. As a final comment, I've heard many people say, money does not make you happy. That statement has some truth to it. But what money does do is buy me the time to do what I love and pay other people to do what I hate doing. And with that itself, that is chapter 1. That in this chapter itself, I had a bit of feeling towards it is sometimes people usually say that money is not everything. I say money is not everything, but money is in fact compressed time. I heard it from a very gifted doctors that actually say this, and I love it so much. Sometimes if we have unlimited time, probably we can do a lot of things. But because there are times in which we don't like to do things. So is that the kind of times that we are able to use the money to pay ourselves to say, hey, today I do not need to go to work? Do you in fact really love your job? If you love it, great, wonderful, I congrats you. But will it get you to retire young? If you have unlimited time, unlimited money, what would you do? Would you chase your dreams? Or would you actually go back to work? If you go back to work, wonderful. I love business. I love working. I love creating values. And that is what I do for the past 15 years itself. I always love doing businesses to create even more to serve. And for me itself, business or works is not a choice. It is to be able, because I understand the value behind. But what's your why? What is your why to retire young? Some people are afraid to retire young because they have a feeling is that I'm going to 做博 I will do nothing at home. I will have senao or 老人痴呆 and such itself. But in fact, it's never the case. It's always that because when you have the time and freedom, you're able to do things like what I'm doing now. In the middle of the day, reading to people that are willing to listen. I'm able, as I'm reading, in fact, I'm growing. That's how it does, because word will become flesh. Today, what is the kind of words that you're saying to yourself? I can't do it. I don't have the time. Or is it that you're going to find the reasons that why you're going to do it? Time priority. A lot of people say time management. Again, I will always want to share with others is it's never about time management. It's about priority. What is a priority for you at this moment? If your priority is to work, so be it. So put your priority. Is it important? Are you really moving a steps towards your retirement? Or basically you're waiting for things to happen in your life? And this is a very, very good book. So of course, I'm not selling book over here. Maybe one day, but not now. Maybe I would recommend all of you if you want to go popular or Kinokuniya in Singapore, Malaysia, or any other countries in Taiwan also. 成品也是不错哦，还是可以去买这本书《Retire Young, Retire Rich》by Robert Kiyosaki. So it gives you a very good perspective. 它给你一个很好的一个观点，如何大家在于提早退休，而且等下退休的时候不一定是很老65岁，还是有可能是85岁哦。接下来的未来，我们的人生就可以过到自己有想要的选择权，好不好？这就是我今天想跟大家来做分享的这一个 chapter。And I will keep on reading until I finish the book itself, and that was my commitment. Okay, have a good day, everyone.